Yeah, yeah, yo. So today, what Shinra will be talking about in his highly intellectual, highly informative, highly specialized YouTube videos is the false stuttering paradox of Discord. Now, the false stuttering paradox is where there are these certain sort of individuals on Discord who, because they lack any sort of ability to actually produce any sort of method of coherent rhetoric, what they do is they actually create their own forms of stutters. Like whenever they hear you speaking, they'll be like, ha, you stuttered. No, that was a stutter. I just paused my sentence. Like those sort of people. It's the same sort of people, those typical archetype of people where, whenever you're speaking, they'll be like, stutter, ha 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 ha. Or they have take pleasure specifically in stopping you from speaking just so they can either A, point out the fact that you're stuttering, or B, argue with you about whether or not they're stuttering. These sorts of people, you can typically point out a few traits about them, and these sort of traits is either A, they're an egoist, B, they just don't have any sort of coherent arguments that they're able to produce, and C, they're likely a cross-first debater, right? Or D, they're an Infinity clone, or Infinity himself, right? These people who typically point out stutters, these people they fall into this general sort of category where, because they lack any sort of personality, because they lack the ability to actually read and write properly, therefore, they're just completely unable to actually engage in any sort of meaningful discourse without actually pointing out somebody's stutters and using grade 1 rhetorical jabs. It's kind of embarrassing, whenever we see somebody point out that somebody else is stuttering, right, at least if they do it multiple times, I'm confused. How does nobody ever just think, oh wow, that's really corny, right? Or you see somebody start off their argument, right? Whenever say you're doing the talking stick and they start off their argument with them insulting the other person, it's yeah, just shut up, man. If I wanted to go and listen to two people scream at each other, right, or if I wanted to go and listen to two people argue, I reckon I would have gone to discord.gg/packing or discord.gg/listing if I wanted to hear two baboons scream at each other, right? Typically whenever people are coming to listen to debates, they're coming to actually hear the arguments, right? And I know there are these certain sort of special ed grunts, right, who sit there and oh my god, look, Infinity or Archie or who likes yelling a lot, right, or Dead Boy, oh my god, you see, he lost argumentatively, but he won rhetorically and he was louder, so haha, right? Those are people who they'll sit in chat and they'll listen to somebody laughing or screaming and they'll be typing lamaus in chat, right? But they aren't actually laughing, right? I've done a survey on this, right? And this survey is called the Discord Laughing Survey. And all you need to do is just ask one simple question. After somebody types LMAO in chat, after somebody says something, ask them, really, are you actually laughing? Behind the screen, are you not just looking at your phone screen with a straight face while typing Lamau and spamming it for attention? I'm confused. People on the app love to overhype and overrate how funny other people on the app are. When you see Dead Boy, right, increase the volume of his mic, or when you see what's it called, somebody quote unquote start bitching somebody else because they're louder than them, and everyone's typing lol. Are you actually laughing though? I know there's always going to be some people who say, oh yeah, no, I am laughing. Now what? But really though, really, could you record yourself, or record the debate with your mic on? Or record the encounter with your mic on, and would you really be laughing? And the answer is no, right? These people, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's another form of grunt syndrome, where because they hear someone being loud, they want to fit in with the rest of the crowd who may or may not actually find it funny, and they start spamming lamaus. They start voting for all of these people on posts because they have this crowd sheep mentality, right? They want to listen to what other people are saying to them. They want to fall in line. They want to speak when they're spoken to. These people, really, it's just an illness, right? I don't know what specifically to call it aside from an illness. I don't know why you see other people acting in a specific way and you just have this instinctual urge to follow along. Maybe it's because you have some inner desire towards being controlled and manipulated by people. I don't know what it is, right? It's I genuinely don't get it, whenever people say, "Oh my God, no, 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 he's just really funny. He's really funny," it's like, well, no, he just isn't really funny, though, man. Like, he just isn't, right? Like, who are you lying to? And it's like, yeah, okay, I get it, right? He's loud. He's like, so you may have laughed the first time, you may have laughed the first minute, but you didn't laugh the second minute, right? Yes, when he called him a bitch at the top of his voice, right? You may have laughed the first time, but you didn't laugh the second time, right? And you definitely didn't laugh the third time. And I can tell you for certain, you certainly didn't laugh the fourth time he called him a bitch at the top of his lungs, right? Like, you're laughing. So now we need to explain, well, okay, if they are laughing, right, what exactly drives the average Discord grunt to be like this? And now I'll tell you, right, it is perpetual submissive syndrome. And what this is whenever you see somebody who you think is intelligent give a take, or whenever you see a large amount of people express a certain opinion, you release debater hormones in your mind, right, which causes you to repeat the same sort of opinion, right, without actually thinking. I'm sure, if I ask the average girl, let me think of the average girl. If I ask Zenny, if I ask Kura, if I ask no, the average girl, the average girl isn't Zenny or Kura, right? Because they'll mask it, They're creative. They're changing the game. They're creative in the way they're grunts. They'll say, no, I watched the debate and I actually came to this conclusion on my own, right? And if that's true, right, maybe that is true, then what you are is you're now an unconscious grunt, right? You see, how it's UI in Leluckism, you see, you're an unconscious grunt, and what this means is you are a grunt by accident, right? You're holding these opinions not because you have perpetual submissive syndrome consciously. Like Infinity or like all of them boys, they didn't consciously beat into your head the idea that you're a grunt. No, you developed that idea in your mind because you're stupid, right? It isn't a matter of, oh my God, well, haha, Infinity is actually grooming me into having these opinions, or what's it called? Era actually sat me down in a room and he manipulated me because he's a big manipulator. It's like, no, you develop these opinions because you're an idiot, right? And because you're an idiot, you're unable to actually form proper opinions, right? Like, for example, I don't know how people can watch Infinity vs. Divinity's second debate, right, where Infinity is just continuously cutting them off and asking for a premise to over and over again and come to the conclusion that anyone won that, right? Because clearly nobody won that, right? Because both of them were just yelling at each other and they didn't actually engage in any sort of substantive dispute, right? And obviously you can say, oh well, Infinity looked more convincing because he was more aggressive in the conversation. And I can grant that, yeah, sure, Infinity may have looked more convincing if you are a moron, right? But then you need to think about, okay, Infinity looked more convincing here. So now you ask yourself, okay, so if Infinity looked more convincing here, why didn't he look as convincing, right, when they debated with moderation, right? And then after you ask yourself such a question, you realize that, oh my lord, wait a second, it's because Infinity is stupid, right? And Infinity just isn't the type of person who can function without either A. And this is the tactic, right? I've noticed that the Spugs have actually begun adapting. So this is the way they adapt. So first of all, if they do have moderation, what they do is they speak for large amounts of time, they filibuster, they try and fit in as many points within their speaking time as possible, so that it can wrap and it can mask the lack of substance that they have. If they just sheerly overwhelm you with the amount of points you have, and I know Apollo mentioned this as well, that whenever Infinity is speaking, right, you need to actually write down what he's saying because of the amount of gibberish that explodes from his mouth whenever he chooses to open it, right? So, for example, I actually came to this conclusion recently. So Archie was debating Rizhan, right? Or he was talking to Rizhan, and he actually immediately, upon not even holding the position, he gave an immediate better defense of egoism than Infinity ever did, right? Now you see, Infinity defines egoism or defines self-interest as simply some desire that you have. So an action is good if and only if it aligns with your desires, right? And now you ask yourself, okay, how is that any different than subjectivism? And the answer is, it isn't, right? It isn't any different than subjectivism, right? And Infinity is just confused. So when you ask yourself, okay, well, when they have these like limited, say 1 to 2 minute speaking times, right? Or like say 1 minute speaking time. Why is it that Infinity performs so much worse when he can't ramble? And the answer is, right, simply he just has no hands, right? But moving on from Infinity, right, you have these grunts, and these grunts, because of their lack of intelligence, they listen to whoever's speaking for the longest amount of time, and they conclude, oh my god, since he's speaking for longer, rationally he must have more to say. And how can he have more to say unless he's thought of more stuff, right? And if he's thought of more stuff, then he's probably going like smart, and he's probably the winning individual, right? These are the sort of bets that people make, because either A, they're just complete idiots, right, or B, they're just grunts. There's only two alternatives there, right? But aside from the unconscious grunt, right, you also have, like, these are the few archetypes of people on Discord. So you have the unconscious grunt, you have the spurg, right, the overhyped spurg. You have the law legend, right? And the law legend, typically it's moved on from being Arcano, because hopefully this guy has actually gotten off the app, and he's no longer getting cheated on by his girlfriend. He's no longer actually having his girlfriend cheat on him with somebody who's way younger than him, right? And also somebody who Shima on Discord. Like, this is the sort of reason why you probably shouldn't be, dating people, right, who you found on Discord. But hey, right, it's no longer Arcano, thankfully. Instead, it's Arcano Light. Like, now we have Ningen, right? Like, we have Ningen just sitting there, cultivating law. And I'm not even sure if he has law. Maybe he has law in terms of like Arcano's friend group, right? But like, he's cultivating law for himself, right, in Arcano's friend group, but he doesn't really have any feats, right? You have some guy called well, actually no, he's literally, oh yeah, some guy called Hunter. Hunter's an absolute idiot. I don't know how people actually came and convinced themselves that Hunter's actually intelligent. There's a recording of me and him debating, but because of some issue, my audio on it is really, really buggy, right? But you could just listen to the stuff he's saying, and he's absolutely confused. He didn't know what moral realism was, right? I don't know how, and before that, he was having like a 20-minute chat argument with me about moral realism. The guy's completely, entirely confused, right? Aside from him, you also have the quote-unquote knowledge Andy. For some odd reason, I've seen people on the app say, oh my god, no, he isn't good at debating, he just knows a lot. Now ask yourself, how is he beating people at debating if he knows a lot, aside from him being able to convert this knowledge he has into argumentation, right? And it's like obvious, if I just know a lot and I spew facts at you and I hit you with word jargon, one, I won't be able to attack your argument if I have no tracking. Two, I won't be able to apply my knowledge properly if I have no argumentation. Three, I won't be able to conjure my knowledge in a manner in which it is not only relevant to the topic, but it also sufficiently defeats my opponent's position if I wasn't a good arguer, right? So saying that your knowledge, you can be a knowledge Andy, and being a knowledge Andy is what makes you win debates and you're a good debater, is just false. To be a debater is to disprove your opponent's position in a manner such that it actually in a manner such that it is convincing to a target audience which you hold. Now, typically I'd say that we have a good reason to have this target audience be people who are convinced by the actual arguments that are being given rather than anything else. But that is the game. That is the aim, to defeat the arguments that your opponent has, right, in a manner which your target audience is convinced by. And now you may say, okay, well, what if you defeat the argument but just nobody knows? It's like, okay, well, then don't know, like, that's sort of a clarity issue, right? If you defeat somebody's argument but nobody knows how to defeat her, right? It's like, I'm not even sure if that even happens. So I think my definition is just like suits how most debates should go, right? Maybe there's some fringe exceptions, but yeah, that's the aim of debating, right? And you now you have to ask yourself, okay, well, say someone like Detroyer, who supposedly isn't a good debater, he's just a knowledge Andy. You just need to ask yourself, okay, well, is Detroyer convincing his target audience? His target audience are people who know a lot about philosophy, right? So they are able to understand the sort of terms that he evokes, right? And able to comprehend how they are defeated whenever he uses them, right? And then you ask yourself, okay, is he defeating these other people's arguments? And clearly, since the guy is like at tier 1, tier 2, tier 1 and tier 0 on most people's tier list, right? Then he must be doing something, right, that the like, say somebody like Archimedes isn't doing. Like, I've seen the guy Archimedes sit down there and say that he could beat Cynthia with a straight face. Like, Jesus Christ, bro, nobody believes you, bro. Anyways, right, but Literally, you just need to ask yourself, okay, well, if he's winning this debate, how is he winning them? And the answer is the only way he could be winning them is defeating his opponent's arguments. Like, people like to overcomplicate debating a whole lot, and they like to make it seem way more complicated than it is, when it literally isn't, right? You have one aim, you get in, you get out, right? You know, and people say, oh, well, we need to pick a judge. It's like, well, no, you don't, mate. Like, you have a target audience, so just send it to the target audience. Making one person the arbiter of who actually wins a debate has always been the most confusing thing to me, right? Because obviously you're intending to convince your target audience, right? And to me, I'm convincing them with my arguments, right? So again, you intend to convince your target audience, and my target audience isn't made up of one person only, because I'm unsure, one, if they even share the sort of standards that they have. Maybe they can say they do, right? But I'm unsure if they actually do, right? And two, it's like, okay, well, you know, you just have a higher level of or you have a higher inductive case, you have like more probability raises, right? If you have loads of people from your target audience, right, actually be convinced by the words that you're spewing out of your mouth, right, whenever you conclude the debate, right? And if more people from your target audience are actually convinced, right, then you have good reason to say you probably won debate in comparison to the others. Like, say for example, you have 1 Trinity versus 10 Trinities, right? And 10 Trinities say you won a debate, right? But 1 Trinity who you decided was going to be the judge of your debate said that you lost, right? Now, all of them are of equal skill, all of them are able to track just as well, right? However, they come to different conclusions. And then you ask yourself, who would you rather believe? The 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 billion, say, Trinities, or the 1 Trinity who is the only person who holds your, like, who holds your opinion, or who holds that you lost the debate? And the answer is, trivially, you'd believe the majority, right? Not because it's a majority, but because it's a majority of people who say, quote unquote, assuming Trinity is competent, right? Would say, like, it's a majority of competent people, right? And then you just need to ask yourself, okay, well, why would I let one competent person judge when I can get 19 confident or competent people to give their opinions, right? And then you always fall back on this sort of counter argument that, oh, these people can just defend their judgments. Like, yeah, they can, right? Nobody is denying their ability to be able to defend the sort of judgments that they're making. What we are denying here is specifically whether or not it's correct or not, right? Most people on the app don't actually enjoy or have any particular sort of passions about debating judgment, right? So, like, again, if somebody refuses to debate judgment with you, maybe it's because debating judgment as a concept is annoying, right? And since debating judgment as a concept is annoying, right, people just don't want to do it, right? And I don't know how people say, oh, well, my judge beat your judge in the debate. It's like, sure, maybe he's better at creating better offensive arguments, right, or better positive cases for the arguments or the opinions that he holds, right? However, that doesn't suddenly mean that his judgment is valid. It doesn't suddenly mean that his opinion should be taken as true, right, or his opinion should be taken as fact. So again, generally, just this sitting there for 20 minutes culture, and actually we're saying, oh yeah, no, we just can't debate without a judge. It's like, look, both of you are sitting in the call for like 20 minutes arguing about who's going to judge your debate when you can just debate and have it recorded. Like, I don't get it, man. Like, honestly, I don't get it, right? These people with perpetual grunt syndrome, I don't get that. I don't get these people who like who take pleasure in creating false status for people just because they have no personality when they're debating. Now you can say, oh well, haha, he threw a lot of rhetorical jabs there. It's like, okay, but at what point does it become corny though? Also, I hit that, by the way. Like, I don't know who he's lying to, but at what point does it become corny? Like, you see somebody constantly throwing out insults, you see somebody speaking fast, you see somebody just, like, saying a bunch of stuff and, like, trying to diminish their opponent, like, within the conversation. It's like, does that just not become corny at one point? Like, do you not just think to yourself, like, oh my god, you're just begging it, man. Like, just debate. Like, shut up. I didn't come here for a packing match, right? And it's like, yes, I think it should become corny to you if you're like a regular human being, you know. Maybe I'm being too generous and assuming that most people on this app are regular human beings, right? But if you are a regular human being, you probably do think that at some point it becomes corny, and it's like, okay, well, why don't we apply this sort of corniness principle onto all of your goats, right? Like, why don't we apply it whenever we see some, like, idiot guy sit there and yell at another human being for a good 20 minutes, right? Just because this person said something they disagree with is really weird. But yeah, like video, like, subscribe, share around.